So I recently purchased a Stream Deck, and while the computer at my studio is a Mac, my home computer is actually a PC. And Soundflow, which is Mac only, works really well for doing Pro Tools, key commands, and macros and all kinds of craziness. But there is no PC version, and I don't think there ever will be, personally. But that doesn't mean that you can't use a Stream Deck with Pro Tools on PC. But there is one major thing that stops it from working, and that is that Windows kind of holds on to the Windows key and the Alt key. So if you try and do any key commands that involve those two buttons, the Stream Deck won't actually be able to hold those buttons down, or it'll have to pick between that modifier and one of the other ones. So the key commands never seem to work. So here's how I got around it. With any of the newer versions of Pro Tools, I think it was around 22.6 or something, they added the keyboard shortcuts. So what I basically have in mind now is I have two presets. So preset 1 would be the default key commands. Preset 2 is a whole slew of the commands adjusted to only use the Control and the Shift key as opposed to the Windows key or the Alt key. And I've mapped those features to a bunch of functions that I would like to put on my Stream Deck. So you can kind of see here I have things like add meter change and automation preview mode and all kinds of stuff that I've kind of just gone through and mapped. So what you can basically do is, if you've never done this before, you can go into this window, find whatever it is you want to change. So like in my case, let's just use preview. You'd go to like where you want to turn on automation preview, you would double click here, you would pick some sort of key command for it, and honestly it doesn't matter if you can remember it because you're going to assign it to a button anyways. So let's just do like Control Shift L. And maybe that's not the best one because maybe you do use loop playback, but you could kind of decide which ones you want to use, and then you just either save it in this menu or you just hold Control and click on the numbers, and if you see here when you click on them it'll do that little flash. That's how you know it's saved. So anyways, I have one of those with 41 custom key commands. Now what I basically did is I have mapped those to my Stream Deck, and just to briefly go over what some of them are, I have one that brings up the window configurations window. I have one that does volume, clip to volume, and volume to clip adjustment, which I'll kind of demo that one in a second. Some grid adjustment tools, visibility tools for in the arrange window, just to see what's in the channel strip. A shortcut for save, copy in, and bounce to mix. This will display the clip gain info. This will display clip line info. This allows me to toggle preview mode on and off, and in fact that one, when you click it, it actually changes based on what's on it. Right to selection I use with preview mode a lot. Adding tempo and meter changes, bringing up the color palette, tab to transient, AFL and solo in place toggle, and then a delete fades one. These are just some examples I threw together. You can also see I crudely made little labels for them. I haven't gotten all fancy and made logos or anything yet. So let me just kind of show you how this stuff works in practice. So I just have a little bit of drums here, and one of the things that happens to me pretty frequently is I may just, instead of like manually doing every single edit, I may use something like Beat Detective to try and just fill and crossfade a whole piece of audio. But if you click on that and fades already exist, you'll get this, the selection must not contain crossfades thing. And normally you'd have to go up here, down to fades, and choose delete. And by default, there is no key command for it. So what I did is I just, as this kind of displays, I just have it on my thing here, and I can just literally click the button, and it gets rid of all the fades, and then I can go through and smooth it again. I have window configurations. So just as an example, I have one that's like, maybe, this is just a demo, but just kind of shows you like what's your mix bus processing and all that, and then you can toggle it away. And all of these things have key commands, or you could build your own and not need the Stream Deck, but for me, some of the key commands are a little awkward. Like the key command to turn on tab to transient, it kind of hurts my hand to do that one, to be honest. So I like to just have it on a button on this. I like to be able to open the color palette whenever I want. And then, as I said, with preview, I have it to be able to turn on and off. And on the actual deck itself, when I'm clicking the button, it will actually switch between those. And I have this button right here mapped as well. So what's kind of cool about it is, let's just say I put this track into like touch mode, and let's just do volume here, and I'll just loop a little section of it here. If I'm just playing this with preview on and I grab the little fader, I could sit there and move the fader, and then whenever I have the spot that I think it's right, instead of like going all the way over here and clicking this, I can just, with my other hand, hit the button that's right to selection, and it'll basically just write that little piece. And you can turn this off as well. So it's kind of a quick way to just kind of do some real quick automation moves. And then this kind of ties into the next one, where if I take this here, and we'll zoom out a bit here, I can take this little chunk here and take that volume automation and change it into clip automation, or I can go back, and again, it's just a couple clicks on the pad using these two guys right here. I can view all volume automation or not with a click. I can view clip gain lines or the info box down at the bottom, and I can add tempo changes or meter changes with a click, and then yeah, the grid adjustment ones too, which again, I know there's simple key commands for it, but for me this just seemed a bit easier to kind of do it that way. I have AFL as well on a toggle switch, so this particular switch I default to solo in place. If I click this, it will switch to AFL, and then you can see this changes with it. So where you would use that is something like this reverb here. If I want to listen to just the reverb on the guitar, I could just go into solo in place, and then just click solo. And then when I'm done, I can just click it again, and I'm back into my normal solo mode. And then probably the one that I seem to use the most is changing what's actually visible on the channel strip. So I can make my first set of inserts appear, disappear, second set appear, disappear, sends, the comments, and then I do some MIDI from time to time, so I really like to have the real-time properties open, where I can add in velocity and duration and quantizing like on input, which is kind of nice. But I can make it disappear as well. And then finally the last two are pretty straightforward, where one is basically just the bounce mix function, and then the other one is just save copy in. So it's definitely not going to let you do big complicated macros. It doesn't, as far as I can see, let you cycle through menu options. But for at least some of the functions in Pro Tools, you can kind of build a deck that looks like this and have some function on it. And then if you do have Mac, I would highly recommend just using Soundflow, because there's a million other things you can do with it. But for me, this is actually working out really well. Gets a few features that I generally need my hands for off the keyboard and onto this, where I can just click it, and that's pretty much it.